The end of a relationship and the start of another is often filled with pain and joy. But what happens when one of the parties won't let go? Thomas Whitney came out late in life, and when he met Lawrence Wong, he thought his life had finally begun. Instead, a relentless campaign of obsession would culminate in an act of violent brutality. Thanks for joining me for Stalked to Death. On July 27, 1999, in Irvine, California, a father and daughter showed up for the child's piano lessons. The father first noticed the smell of gas, then noticed what he thought was a dead body lying on the floor. When the police arrived, they discovered there wasn't one body, there were two. Lawrence Wong, age 51, had been stabbed 25 times, and Guy Thomas Whitney, age 60, had been stabbed 36 times, including 7 stab wounds to the face. The evidence indicated that the men had been attacked while lying asleep in bed together. Wong's body was found next to the bed in the master bedroom. Whitney's body was found at the bottom of the stairs, covered in blood. There was blood splatter on the walls, on the ceiling, and banister. The house smelled like gas, and the police discovered that the oven burners had been turned on, but no flame appeared. There were no signs of a break-in. Police noted that there were a distinctive series of footprints in several rooms in the house. In the kitchen, detectives found 2 bloody knives in their position in the knife block. The 2 men had only lived together for 5 weeks before they were murdered. Lawrence James Wong was born in Los Angeles County in 1948. Wong was a musical instructor at Los Angeles Harbor College, where he and Thomas Whitney met. In addition to being a much-loved teacher, Wong was an internationally acclaimed musician, performing as a solo pianist and accompanist for opera singers like Jose Carrera. Guy Thomas Whitney struggled coming out with his family, who did not approve. In fact, according to his friends, Whitney didn't come out until 1990, when he was 52 years old. In an interview with friends, one of them said that Whitney's family in Texas rejected him outright because of his homosexuality. Another friend noted the sad irony that he had finally found himself, only to be murdered not even 10 years later. Whitney studied at the Juilliard School of Music in New York and earned a doctorate from USC. In the years before his murder, Whitney had started a private conservatory providing vocal coaching, piano lessons, and musical direction. One of his friends said he loved to turn students on to the world of music. Initially, police suspected Larry Wong's ex. They had recently ended their long-term relationship, and the ex had a life insurance policy on Wong. The ex was distraught and angry over the breakup, a breakup caused when Wong met Whitney and left his relationship to live with Whitney. Pretty quickly, the police discovered that the ex-partner had an alibi, and his footprints did not match the bloody footprints all over the crime scene, so the police moved on. One day after the murders, investigators began to explore Thomas Whitney's past relationships. As they searched Whitney and Wong's house, they found a slew of cards signed by Vincent Chung. When questioned, friends told detectives Thomas Whitney had complained that his former boyfriend, Vincent Chung, 36, had been stalking him for weeks. Chung and Whitney met in late December 1998 or early January 1999 and began dating. Soon thereafter, Whitney ended the relationship and began a new relationship with Lawrence Wong. In early April 1999, Chung spoke of his relationship with Whitney while out to dinner with several friends. People attending the dinner noted how upset he was about the breakup. Chung claimed he hadn't had many loving relationships in his life. One of the people described Chung as heartbroken, but they also said after a month or so, Chung stopped talking about Whitney to his friends. On April 15th, Whitney's friend Bolin Hai called to wish him a happy birthday. During their phone conversation, Whitney told Hai he saw a man named Choi outside his house. Whitney became upset and said, "Oh my God, he's back again. And I think he's trying to get into the house." Whitney told Hai this person had become obsessive and had been coming around and had gotten into the house twice, including several times when Whitney had found Chung naked in his house when he came home from work. Hai described Whitney's demeanor as hysterical. Whitney told him the person was pounding on the door and was trying to get in. When Hai suggested Whitney call the police, Whitney told him he didn't want to do that because it was an embarrassing situation. Several of Whitney's friends counted how she had visited his house several times between April and July, was still struggling with his identity as a gay man, and the judgment from the police and his neighbors might have been too much embarrassment for him, but we'll come back to that point later. In early May, a friend helped Whitney clear out his garage of the gifts that he had received from Chung. According to that friend, half of the garage was filled with delivery boxes, FedEx, mail, pouches, all different sizes. She estimated they opened a total of 50 to 60 packages that day alone. This friend also told investigators Whitney had given Chung a garage door opener and later took it back. She further testified Whitney used to keep a spare key to the house above the outdoor light. According to Whitney, I did away with that key, meaning he had changed the locks in June. It seems clear that in the weeks before the murders, Chung's life seemed to be unraveling. He had several petty theft convictions, and in June he received a deportation notice. He failed to appear on the theft charges on July 15th, and a bench warrant was issued for his arrest. Around the same time, Chung began giving away his possessions, including a box containing all the letters a friend of his had written to him over 20 years. He mailed another friend his green card and an envelope marked "Top Secret" and "My final words and instructions." Chung was making arrangements to meet up with friends for final goodbyes, stressing the urgency of the meeting and that they do it right away. When one of his friends asked if they could postpone, Chung told him, "I won't be here tomorrow. This is the last time you may ever see me." During that lunch, Chung talked about his relationship with an older man who no longer wanted to see him, but then he added that it was 4 months ago and it was long forgotten. Chung was described as upbeat at that lunch. On the evening of that same day, Chung checked into a motel near his home and subsequently tried to commit suicide. All of these events I'm describing to you happened over a few days. The day after the suicide attempt, Chung called a friend and told him that he had been outside Whitney's house during the murders and heard Whitney's voice. He also told the same friend in the same call that he had been at home asleep during the murders. With tips from Mr. Whitney's friends, the police began to look into the background of Vincent Chung. They discovered his outstanding warrants for theft, and an undercover team began to follow him. At 10:45 a.m. on July 28th, the team staking out Chung's home in Temple City, northeast of downtown Los Angeles, saw Chung going into a hotel across the street from where he lived with his mother. Police approached Chung, verified his identity, and arrested him on parole violations 20 hours after the double murder. In police custody, they noted that Chung had a superficial laceration in the center of his chest, less than an inch long. When they asked Chung how he got that cut, he told the police that he didn't remember how it happened. He also told the police he was at home asleep on the night of the murders and acted surprised when he was told about the murders. Chung's mother, with whom he lived, told the police that she hadn't seen her son in 2 or 3 weeks. Vincent Chung claimed the last time he saw Whitney was in April and that he waited outside of Whitney's home on his birthday until Whitney returned and then followed Whitney's car into the garage. The entire interrogation of Vincent Chung is really strange. I've read it, I haven't seen it, but it seems to teeter between him making these damning admissions to claiming his complete and utter innocence to fits of tears and what seemed like utter despair. In a recorded phone call after his arrest, Chung called a friend and left a message saying, "I did it." In a later phone conversation, Chung was asked what he meant, and he replied that he had tried to commit suicide. In a second recorded conversation, Chung left a message saying that he was being held on a parole violation and had not yet been charged with the murders, saying, "I know who did it, but I didn't do it." When asked who did it, he said, "My partner." This is, of course, over a jail telephone where all of the calls are recorded as a matter of routine. Soon after Chung's arrest, the police found the 1990 Chevy Lumina Whitney had sold Chung in the garage of the house Chung shared with his mother. Lawrence Wong had never been inside of this car. When the car was tested for DNA, there were 3 types of DNA found that included all 3 men. The 2 bloody knives used to commit the murders were found in the kitchen of the home. The DNA found on the knives was consistent with both victims, but when it was tested for Chung's DNA, there wasn't enough profile to confirm that it was Chung's. When the police talked to Vincent Chung's mother, she told the police that her son was troubled and had been in trouble with the law. She also said that she hadn't seen him in several weeks, even though they lived together. And finally, she couldn't provide her son with an alibi for the night of the murders. Back to Chung's admissions. Chung admitted that he had surprised Whitney in the garage of his house. After their breakup, he admitted to banging on the windows of Whitney's house on his birthday. When the police got to the night of the murders, however, Chung repeatedly said he didn't know what happened and he didn't know who would have done the killing. As I said before, Chung seemed to ping-pong between crying hysterically and making fairly damning admissions during his interrogation. He told the police that he did write Whitney lots of cards, but they were only his way of trying to express his gratitude for all the things that Whitney had bought him and the loving way that he had been treated. Chung said he felt as though he owed Whitney something. When police tried to take Vincent Chung's footprints, one of the detectives noticed that Chung was crinkling his toes to make his feet seem smaller. Once Chung was called out on it, he straightened his foot. When tested, Chung's feet fit perfectly. When police asked Vincent Chung about the words goodbye he had written on his calendar on the same day as the murders, Chung said that that was the day that he had planned to kill himself. Chung told the police how on one occasion he had made 100 cards for Whitney, but when he tried to give the cards to Whitney, he was rejected, with Whitney telling him that he didn't want to see Chung anymore and that he would call the police if Chung didn't stop showing up. Chung told the police this angered him, but he told the police that this was the last time that he saw Thomas Whitney, repeating that he had nothing to do with the murders. Chung admitted he engaged in stalker-like behavior, but said that he did not kill the couple. It was clear that the police weren't getting very far with Chung, but the evidence of stalking was overwhelming. At Vincent Chung's 2003 5-week trial, the jury of 10 women and 2 men deliberated for 4 days, finding 31-year-old Vincent Wei Chao Chung guilty. The jury also found that Chung was guilty of the special circumstances of using a deadly weapon to commit the murders, and the fact that he had committed multiple murders. He was sentenced to life without parole, plus 26 years for the enhanced circumstances of the murder. One of Mr. Whitney's friends speculated that he may not have called the police because he was still not entirely comfortable with his sexuality. But it's also true that many men, gay or straight, have trouble reaching out for help, often thinking they can handle it. On top of that, of course, there's a very long, well-documented history of difficulty for LGBTQ plus folks in receiving support and fair treatment from the police. Though in this case, the police were very thorough and very quick to act in apprehending a suspect, bringing him to trial fairly quickly. But then again, these murders happened in a very wealthy Los Angeles community. As for what to do if you're being stalked, there's no universal set of steps you should take, but here are a few things that most professionals in law enforcement recommend. Number 1, call the police for immediate assistance. You know yourself and your situation better than anyone. Trust your instincts and call for help if you feel that you're in danger. The sooner, the better. Number 2, alert others. Tell trusted friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, and/or your HR department. Number 3, take threats seriously. As in the Whitney Wong murders, even unwanted gifts and attempts to contact you through cards and letters can be acts of aggression if they are unwanted. If you or anyone you know is being stalked, please use the resources listed in the show notes. You deserve to live a life free of violence or intimidation of any kind. Thanks for joining me. Please subscribe to the channel and like the video.